Good morning, First Universalist. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing our opening hymn.
Piali, Posh First Universalist Hiopa Manam Miash Amelia Marquez ko Mamatakumam, Qualatecan Nation ko Kutumkaman, Contreras ko Marquez. Good morning and greetings. Welcome to First Universalist Church. It is good, my relatives. My name is Amelia Marquez, descendant of the Qualatecan Nation of South Texas and granddaughter of the Contreras Marquez family. My pronouns are she and they interchangeably. I am a congregant here at First Universalist and a proud Union High School educator in Minneapolis. In addition, I'm honored to be a congregant and to stand here amongst all of you today as a member of our early adult group, a friend, a relative, and many other titles that we might dive into later on in the service. It is my joy and privilege to lead worship today with Reverend Laura, Nico Van Ostren, our Cummins Ministerial intern, the Amy K. Bryant, and Jay Albright. Gratitude to John and Olu and to all the artists and ushers and greeters and tenders of this space. The orchid here today is in honor of Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout and his service to First Universalist. If you are new, we're so glad you are here. I hope you'll join us again. Welcome to this community we create together each time we show up, taking a risk on connection and the power of love. Welcome to this hour where we lean into a universalist understanding of faith that that names each and every one of us as holy and worthy, welcome and wanted with room to grow. Welcome to a community of love and hope, committed to practicing beloved community, grounded in a love so inclusive and expansive and irresistible that it cannot help but transform us individually and collectively, creating a world here and now of mutual thriving for us all. Real quick, I did just want to take a moment and thank those of you that came and smudged with us this morning. Sorry, just seeing wonderful faces pop in right at this exact moment. Thank you for smudging with us this morning. If you're still smelling some of that, that is what we did at our 10:30 service, and we plan to continue to smudge maybe monthly or so based on what feedback we gather, and we welcome any and all. But thank you so much for those that participated in our first ever sacred smudging ceremony here at First Universalist. It's a huge lift for me as we go into this new week, as I battle Sunday scaries before I return to work from a break this week. As we begin, let's remember we are not now, nor are we ever alone on this journey. We are surrounded by family and friends, present in person and in the bones of our memory, and we are supported by this community of faith. So I invite you to take a moment now to turn and greet your neighbors in the pews, to take it as your mission to make sure that everyone around you gets a warm welcome and maybe even a question. What is holding you? What is holding you? Is it a person, a place, a rhythm, a prayer, a song? So go ahead and share your name and your pronouns and answer what is holding you. Let's go. Join me in saying our chalice lighting words, words that remind us each week that love is the spirit of this church and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
So this past month in worship, we've been focusing on repair and justice and gratitude. A few weeks ago, Reverend Ashley took us through a 3-step process of regulate, relate, reason, a process she learned to help her children move through the world. Regulate, relate, reason. And as adults, we know that there is little, if anything, that we teach our kids that we don't also have to learn ourselves. So when this was first introduced in the worship meeting, though, the 3 steps I heard, if you want to call that, or 3 things that one has to move through, were described as regulate, relate, and resolve. And sometimes when I hear something, it just gets stuck in my brain. And so those were the 3 words that were stuck in my brain and stayed there. As Ashley led us through the service, she was talking about different ways we can regulate ourselves. I have to say, I was saying to Amelia, I don't think I have felt so much peace in the sanctuary as with that smudging ritual. Like, I feel like something deep in me is like, regulated sounds too Western, honestly, just super grounded and rooted and at peace. So, and we do, we breathe together in the sanctuary, we sing together, and get to experience things that kind of go into the depth of our bodies and our spirits together to help regulate. Last Sunday, with our glorious welcome of children being dedicated and new members, we really leaned into relationship. What are the promises and commitments we make to one another as congregants of this congregation and faith community? We were reminded of our interconnectedness and the truth that change is constant, because every baby, every child, every new member that is part of this congregation changes who we are together. Being in relationship asks us to be courageous and kind and curious and committed to building beloved community. And then resolve. Resolve can be about fixing or finding a solution, but when I think of resolve, I think of that inner spark or that spirit that says, yes, I will go through this with you. Yes, I will be willing to be changed and do the sometimes hard things that are required of me. Yes, I resolve to find my way into this community and beyond, and to bring my gifts and grit to a larger calling of love and justice. This year's Common Read selection is by the Unitarian Universalist Association. Every year they choose a book that all congregations across the country are reading. It's called Social Change Now, A Guide for Reflection and Connection by Deepa Iyer. Deepa was at our General Assembly this past summer and sharing about her book. She leans into a social change ecosystem map, which outlines 10 roles, such as like healer, storyteller, disruptor, builder, guide. And that she says that when acting independently, we create interdependently, that would not be good. When acting interdependently, we create this lasting social transformation. So let me just say that in fewer words, because that was a lot of words. We can get stuck on one idea of how to work for social change. But the truth is that there is no one way. And lasting social change requires people on the forefront and people who are in the background. It requires those who are really strategic, meticulous, long-range planners, and those can be spontaneous and outrageous. That requires all of us. So if you're feeling stuck on where your gifts are and what you can contribute, I recommend you check out that book. And if you're feeling really called, perhaps you could even create a spring program where you guide people into reading that book from this congregation so we can all learn together. Regulate, relationship, resolve. I think we have to tend to all 3 of these in these treacherous times. So let us have this place and these people help hold us and remind us to remain courageous and engaged in all the ways we can. And the kids are going to get courageous and engaged this morning with Seth. It's called our Common Ground Sunday. Allison here, our Director of Children, Youth, and Family, is going to lead kids out of the sanctuary, kids of all ages. It's true. So thank you, Allison. Take care. Because we didn't sing them out last time.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. One more time. This little light of mine, I'm gonna
Teach Us to Remember Our History by Jude Geiger. Spirit of life, God of many names, source of hope. We come together at the end of another week, some worn down by struggles of health, of home, or work. May we be a community that makes space for the sharing of joys and sorrows, angers and hopes, and grace and forbearance. In our nation's life, we pause this holiday weekend to remember Native American lives lost from European colonization on what is now our soil. Teach us to remember our history. Though we cannot make amends for what is done before, may we learn from those ways never to repeat them in our lives today. May we develop new ways of relating to neighbor and stranger without violence or coercion, deceit, or greed. Mother of Grace, help us to find a sense of humility where we have privilege and strength where we face oppression. In our struggles, may we learn compassion, and in our power, may we learn temperance. As a community of faith, may we be a safe harbor in a world that is often harsh towards difference. Challenge us to use our presence as a healing force for justice and equity, knowing that although we have come far in the civil struggles of our times, there are many people who are still left behind. And the work of building community is just as pressing as ever before. So, if you're interested in prayer and song as a way to tap into that part of ourself that's being called in and out to work for justice, I have an invitation for you. First Universalist will be leading the monthly interfaith prayer vigil at the Whipple Federal Building in Fort Snelling on Tuesday, December 8th at 7:30 in the morning. It's a commitment to show up, especially when we have a winter date. These are 1-hour gatherings of prayer and song and remembrance and a call for action by ICOM, which is the Minnesota Interfaith Coalition on Immigration. We'll have more information in this week's Liberal, and I will speak more about the Whipple Building in a bit. But I encourage you to come if you can. Reverend Ruth McKenzie and Nico, I think, are leading that service, so it should be beautiful. Here we pray in many ways, individually and as a congregation, and each Sunday we purposely create some time in this service for joys and sorrows in a communal way. Often, individuals stand up and call out into the space what they are holding in their hearts and spirits, and we respond with the words, "You are not alone. We are holding it together." Today, we hold Steve and Janet Merrill in our prayers. Steve was in the hospital this week with a heart issue. They tried a procedure on Friday, but it was unfortunately not successful. Janet reported yesterday that Steve was feeling better, but they're still trying to resolve the heart issue. So for Janet and Steve, we say, "You are not alone. We are holding it together." And Polly just let me know that Deborah Talon fell on Thanksgiving Day. She broke her clavicle and her ankle in 3 places. She is currently at HCMC and will be having surgery sometime this week, and then likely needing to go to rehab, because when you break your clavicle, you can't exactly use crutches. So for Deborah and the days ahead in her healing, you are not alone. We are holding it together. I also want to hold this congregation in prayer. Next Sunday will be our last Sunday with Reverend Glenn Thomas. It's going to be a hard one and a beautiful one, so I encourage you all to come and to know that in the days ahead, you are not alone. We are holding it together. So this Sunday, we're going to turn once again to one another and create groups of about 3. And I ask you to share what you're holding today, a joy or a sorrow. And when each person is finished, if you as a group can say, "You are not alone. We are holding it together," that would be a nice way of affirming what you heard together. My hope is that this will allow all voices, those who are comfortable standing up in this room and calling out joys and sorrows, and those who would or could never ever do such a thing, to be heard in a more intimate way. So if you can gather in groups of 3 and share and then respond with those words, that would be beautiful.
Take these next few moments to finish your thought and to close with the words of affirmation, and we will sing Spirit of Life.
My name is Nico, and my pronouns are they, them. In a moment, the ushers will come forward for today's offering. And if you are finding yourself in need of financial or spiritual support right now, reach out to a staff person and we will get you connected with resources and care. Today's offering goes towards the Minnesota Honor Tax, directly to the Lower Sioux Indian community. We live and we worship on land that was stolen from the Dakota people here. The Minnesota Honor Tax asks all of us to learn the story of this land and then liberate some of our resources. You might find your way to an appropriate dollar amount by considering the property taxes that you pay to the same government that stole this land. You might give until you feel generous and then turn that into your monthly donation. You might offer a gift of time if time is what you have to offer, and spend some of that time on the Minnesota Honor Tax website learning about it and letting what you learn change something in you. The honor tax is not an act of throwing money at a painful history to make it go away or to make ourselves feel like we've paid our debt and completed the work. This is an opportunity, like the smudging that we did in the sanctuary just before this, and other efforts to deepen relationships between this congregation and the Indigenous people locally, This is an opportunity to practice the UU value of generosity, not as a top-down charity model, but as a spiritual practice of connection, gratitude, and hope. As you give today, and as we learn the story of this land and build meaningful relationships, see what shifts in your body and spirit. I hope that shift is powerful. Thank you for giving generously to Minnesota Honor Tax and committing in more ways than one to the work of repair that is necessary to bring about the beloved community that we know is possible. The ushers will now receive the morning's offering.
Please join me in singing "We Are." For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are a grandmother's prayer. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
I've gone to the Whipple Building in Minneapolis a number of times over the past few months. Twice for gatherings with people of faith. One was an early October morning at 7:30 with the Interfaith Vigil, and the other time was about a month ago when Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was in town spouting lies about the federal government's ICE operations and asking for support for the illegal deportation and detention of our neighbors. I've also gone on quieter days, supporting the First Unitarian Universalist Church in Rochester's liberation advocacy efforts. They, like First Universalist and so many other churches, are assisting and supporting asylees and others seeking immigration. First Universalist in Rochester organizes legal assistance and housing and emotional support, ensuring that those seeking refuge receive holistic care. We do the same for the families we're connected with here. They partner with the Southeastern Minnesota Interfaith Immigration Legal Defense, SMILD, in this work. And like this congregation, the majority of the work and action is driven by congregants. So 3 times over the past few months, I've hopped in the car with Reverend Ruth McKenzie, who used to serve here, and Reverend Terry Berner, who is the executive director of the Minnesota UU Social Justice Alliance, to carpool over to the Whipple Building. We are the St. Paul contingent of UU ministers who all live within a few miles of one another, so we often carpool to other witness and advocacy events at the Capitol and beyond. We've met a small group of people from Rochester in the early mornings. They have to leave Rochester mighty early to get to the Whipple Building by 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. for immigration check-ins. We are there, 3 ministers in our collars, a bit of religious theater, bringing the image of religious authority in the face of injustice, something that has a long history with liberation theologians and faith leaders fighting for civil rights. Twice it has been uneventful, kind of like checking in at the DMV or something. Last time we accompanied Carlos, he was told to return in 2 months. He left the Whipple Building and joyfully called his wife with a report. But this past Monday, things went differently. Carlos showed up wearing his brown suit, looking like a businessman, dapper and respectful. Phil and his wife, the key liaisons from the Rochester UU congregation, drove him once again. And this time, Patricio, a person who immigrated from Ecuador and is now a U.S. citizen, was along with us. He provided translation services and an incredible amount of warmth and kindness to all of us. We went through security like before. The men running security were kind and even a little bit playful, and we gathered in the room in the back of the building, set up like a waiting room with a glass-windowed office with a slit by the counter where you can exchange documents. The same woman was there before, fluent in Spanish and communicating easily with Carlos. But this time we waited longer. So long that we witnessed a different man who had been waiting in the room with two other people being called into the back area through a doorway in the far corner. It happened so uneventfully. His name was called as calmly as a staff member at a doctor's office calling in another patient. He went in, and I noticed that the couple that he came with were getting more and more agitated as time went on. They were pacing, they were switching seats and having a hard time settling. Eventually, a man opened the door again and told the couple they could go back into the enclosed area. A few minutes later, out of the same door, they left the office abruptly, and the woman was in tears. So by this point, Carlos, as time was going on, was getting fretful as well. Patricio was reminding him to breathe, bless his heart, and our eyes were catching one another as we were feeling a sense of something gone amiss. Ruth handed Carlos a pen, told him to write Phil's contact information on his hand, but the pen wouldn't work, so he pulled out a piece of paper and shakily wrote us on a scrap paper Phil's information, and then he tucked it between his phone and the phone case, just in case, so he could grab the note if his phone was taken, and Phil could be the contact for attorneys. By this point, Phil was heading down the hall. He knew there was an attorney who they'd been working with in immigration cases with other people connected to the church down the hall in a hearing. The woman at the desk told Carlos it was taking so long because she was waiting to hear what date he would have to return to check in. And a sigh of relief came over all of us. But a few minutes later, the door in the corner opened. At the same time, another man entered the door at the front of the office and was walking behind Carlos as he walked to and through that door. That was it. A few minutes later, Ruth saw Carlos at a distance through the glass-windowed office in handcuffs with several men around him. We weren't granted an opportunity to see him or to say goodbye. A man came up to the glass window and he informed us that Carlos had been detained. As we inquired about what was happening and what was next, we were told that he'd be detained in the federal building for the day, and then in the evening he would be transported to a detention center. Then they would begin the proceedings to deport him. Phil asked about Venezuela, since previously they were not accepting flights with deportees, as they call them. The man said he didn't know the plan for Venezuela, but if they weren't accepting flights, he would simply be sent to a third country. Terry stopped the man before we parted. She asked if he could tell Carlos that we loved him. What? The man said. Can you tell Carlos we love him? Sure, he replied. We know that may not happen, but in that moment, the woman at the desk and the man who was reporting on Carlos's status knew that he was loved and whole and holy and beloved. Breathe with me for a minute. Breathe a prayer for Carlos and for all the people who are being snatched away from friends and families and other beloveds every day. We saw 2 men disappeared in less than an hour. It is staggering, Shameful and so unjust, and it's being done in our name. We heard from an attorney that Carlos was taken to the Sherburne County Detention Center that night. And on Friday, when we were back at the Whipple building accompanying a man from Myanmar, formerly Burma, we heard that Carlos was going to be deported to Venezuela that night, leaving behind a wife and a teenage daughter. Fortunately, the person from Myanmar was uneventful. He has to come back in 6 months, something he's been doing consistently since 2012. I spoke with Amelia to plan this service on that evening after Carlos was taken. Honestly, the injustice and the sadness and the weight of the mourning were still very present, and they appear to still be present. It's really impossible to see what's happening now without thinking back at our nation's history, particularly with Thanksgiving week. A history that has welcomed and been hostile to immigrants. And the history of a country with the original sin of settlers and the US military, responsible for massacres and forced displacements and cultural eradication of the indigenous populations across the country. A couple of years ago, a few UU congregations went on a sacred sites tour with the Minnesota Council of Churches. Some of you may have had an opportunity to do that. They run all the time. Jim Bear Jacobs led the tour for us. He is just a really wonderful Indigenous leader in the Twin Cities. It was an extraordinary experience of learning about Minnesota history from a Native perspective through storytelling. We went to a number of historic sites. We heard the truth about our history, and then we spent time in silence and meditation and reflection. It was deeply powerful, and I'll never be able to walk those trails over at Fort Snelling again without feeling the spirit of the approximately 16,000 Dakota people who in the winter of 1862 were forced into a concentration camp on the river flats below Fort Snelling. The conditions were severe and inhumane, and many did not survive. So it's not hard to follow the thread from times of the past through to the present. The history of our faith and the history of our nation are intertwined in the United States. In 2012, the Unitarian Universalist Association focused our annual General Assembly on the doctrine of discovery. I don't know about you guys, I felt like I got a good education, but I had a pretty thin, if any, understanding of the doctrine of discovery. With the current rise of Christian nationalism and fascism in our country, it feels like the doctrine of discovery has cast a wide net, seeking to divide us, demonize the other, and have a specific type of conservative Christian nationalist rule and domination in our country. Just listen to the language of 3 different popes in the 15th century legitimizing the stealing of land and the murder of indigenous people in the name of Christianity and God. Pope Nicholas V in 1452, invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens, which are non-Christians, I don't even know if I said that right, and pagans, whatsoever, and reduce their persons to perpetual slavery. Pope Nicholas V in 1455, discover and acquire whatsoever islands and countries of the pagans and enemies of Christ. The said king may subdue, occupy, and possess all lands, islands, harbors, and seas. And Pope Alexander IV in 1493, so we're talking a 40-year span here. We give, grant, and assign to you all islands and mainlands found and to be found, discovered and to be discovered, for the spread of the Christian empire and the subjugation of barbarous nations. The doctrine of discovery, it paved the way for colonists to come to this country and to claim it as their own. And Unitarian Universalists emerged from those Christian roots of the early colonists and are connected to this history. We have buildings on lands taken from indigenous people. We have profited materially and structurally from our ancestors. And we have grappled with our history. During the 2012 General Assembly that I mentioned, we adopted a resolution that formally repudiated the doctrine of discovery and called on Unitarian Universalist congregations to educate themselves about the harm and the work of dismantling its ongoing legal and cultural effects. Many congregations have engaged in solidarity work within local Indigenous communities. But this is never a one and done situation. The doctrine of discovery and white Christian nationalism are theologically counter to Unitarian Universalism. At their core, they declare that some lives are sacred and worth saving and thriving, while others are not. That some people are entitled to liberty and self-determination, while others are not. We must continue to actively educate ourselves and act according to our UU values to combat this dangerous continual tide of domination, division, exclusion, capitalism, with white supremacy at the center. Instead of passively allowing this deadly theology to exist, we need to lean into a liberatory theology, a theology of relationship and of resolve, a theology that calls us to a place of love at the center, not love at the center, not just one type of human being at the center. We use the word pluralism as something that is central to our faith. It's a faith that calls us to listen to the wisdom and the revelation of other religions and practices. We fortunately had the ability to do that together today. To be in relationship with a humble stance, grounded in mutual respect. We have profited from sanctioned land theft and the destruction of the Indigenous way of life. And if you are like me, the white people here today are able to live lives with little thought of our Indigenous siblings day to day. So I want to thank Amelia for her courage and resolve to bring a practice here to this church that honors that which she knows as sacred and healing. And I pray that the rest of us who joined in this practice will get called into relationship, into an embodied relationship that taps into our ancestors and a spirit greater than us all. And I hope that we continue to challenge ourselves to dig into our own resolve and find ways to fight fascism and to build the world inspired by the dreamings that Sweet Honey in the Rock sang in their song, We Are. Will you sing with me now?
We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and sons of brave visions, with sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and builders of nations, with seekers of truth, and keepers of faith, makers of peace, and wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the spirit of God.
Excuse me, I'm Denise Collins. On Tuesday, December 2nd at 5:30 to 7:30, there's going to be a non-cooperation training here at the church. And Lena Gardner will be there, and also Sherry Seifert. I want you all to know if you need information about registration, please come up to me and I will give you information.
Thank you. We'll also repeat that in the announcements at the end so everyone has it from the mic. Thanks, Denise. All right. Before I do the reading, I want to invite you into something that I need right now, and that is I can feel the heaviness in the room and in my body from what Laura just shared, and we are midway through. So I want to invite us into 3 intentional breaths, as we often do here, and just breathe with it for a moment. If it feels good to your body to keep breathing deeply like that, please do so as we go into the reading. This is from Tanaya Winder, who is an Indigenous writer, a poet, an educator. This is Being by Tanaya Winder. Wake up, greet the sun and pray. Burn cedar, sweetgrass, sage, sacred herbs to honor the lives we've been given. For we have been gifted these ways since the beginning of time. Remember, when you step into the arena of your life, think about those who stand beside you, next to, and with you. Your ancestors are always in your corner along with your people. When we enter this world, we are born hungry. Our spirits long for us to live out our traditions that have been passed down for generations. Prayer, ceremony, dance, language, our ways of being. Never forget you were put on this earth for a reason. Honor your ancestors. Be a good relative.
I want to remind you all that there's no way that people can be illegal on stolen land. Today is the start of a journey, a new chapter. The moment we allow for a ceremony that many Native people across Turtle Island practice for time immemorial and still to this day. We continue to recognize that our church has been and still is a mostly white-bodied space where, regardless of whether we like it or not, still has miles and miles to go before we can say we are truly an inclusive space. This isn't to discredit the work that many of you in this space have done to this point, but it is to remind all of us that we live in a system built by colonization, genocide, and white supremacy. This church, whether we like it or not, is a system of white supremacy. This is a reality I face daily while navigating the world of education within all of my identities. Like our school systems, this church is still a system of white supremacy. Did that make you feel a little uncomfortable? Did you feel angry by those words? Did they make you feel sad, anxious, or maybe even a little embarrassed? That is okay. Any response is okay. We've learned the steps. We have to accept the reality and practice exactly what this month has been about, which is regulate, relationship, and resolve. And you aren't alone. We are, all of us, holding this together. I truly mean it by those words. I walk through this world with many identities. Back in my home state of Montana, I was often the brunt of jokes with my mostly white friend groups. In those circles, I was seen as brown. I mean, brown. And I heard all of the stereotypical Mexican and Native jokes. Even my white adult mentors would occasionally make these jokes toward me. Yet, many of my family members would call me words that were synonymous with being white. Simply because I was a lighter tone than my siblings or my mother, some of my students are perplexed because they see some lighter, more Eurocentric features, while some of the other students and many of my colleagues see the darker hair, the trademark Contreras eyebrows, and my brown eyes. Add in another variable to this mix and recognize that I am what many Latinos call no sabo, which when directly translated from Spanish is a grammatically incorrect way to say, I don't know, but has been used as a means to shun those of Latino descent that don't speak Spanish, which I want us to think about that relationship for a second. The unfortunate reality that many people, especially from places like Mexico, believe, much like we do here in the United States, that with English, is that you're not truly Mexican if you don't speak Spanish. Spanish, a language that was brought over and forced onto the indigenous people south of the US border with Mexico. And then we dive a little deeper into the struggle of being someone who shares the same identities that I hold so sacred and deeply to myself: Hispanic, Latino, Chicano, Mexicano, Mexican American, Indigenous Mexican American, Indigenous Native American, American Indian, Indian, and even more. The history teacher side of me looks at each of these words and recognizes that truthfully, none of them make any sense. Let's just cover the fact that every one of these words are rooted in colonizer languages. Then we face a reality where if you were born in the United States, there are people who are with people that are also Mexican that don't accept you. And despite having indigenous roots and connections to both sides of the US-Mexico border, there are some Native Americans who won't accept me either. And as we see every day, especially with the story that Reverend Laura shared, many of the people of the United States won't accept me either. My father, who is now a citizen of the United States, did not come to this land thinking his children and grandchildren would have such a perplexing internal battle provoked by external factors. When he arrived in the US around the age of 17, all he could think about was making a better life for himself and a hope that should he bring children into the world, that he would give them a better future than what he would have faced should he have stayed in Mexico. He didn't teach us Spanish. Like many families who move from Latin America to the United States, there is still a form of unspoken shame or nervousness about teaching your children Spanish. And while my parents did what they believed in their hearts was the best decision at the time, now I have random people on the internet on my silly little TikToks that will say, "No sabo." And then there is the other side. Growing up, some of my family members embraced and discussed our indigenous roots while others refused. Full colonization and ethnocide in real time. We have a strong belief within Native peoples that you do not just get to claim you are Native. It is about who gets to claim you. Have your people claimed you? And if not, you sometimes get the public shaming of being called a pretendian, or what we call a pretend Indian. It isn't wrong. Only recently was there such an effort of people really wanting to try to claim Native ancestry. Suddenly, it became a fad. Yet, it is often so many of these pretendians that want to claim roots but don't understand what it means to grow up indigenous. They don't look for ways to give back to their people. They don't understand. When we start this new chapter with medicine being our focal point during a time of rising fascism, deportations, continued and possible genocide, new genocides, and all of the other atrocities that we see ourselves or our neighbors go through, I need you to remember it is going to be uncomfortable. And yet, I ask all of you to go a step further with me. I want you to recognize that the atrocities didn't start overnight. We all played some part in it. Even at the minute level of choosing to be a Unitarian Universalist, when we have record upon record of our UU ancestors creating residential boarding schools and laying claim over our Native relatives throughout places like Colorado, Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. So, Amelia, why? Why are you sharing all these stories, maybe making some people feel uncomfy, and yet asking us to come together and smudge with you and your ancestors? Mi gentes, my relatives, mi kuantam, mi pilam. I've had to reconcile the fact time and time again that I will never be 100% of anything to anyone. Whether it is being Latino, Native, white, brown, or even a woman. Someone somewhere will have opinions to tell me I am being myself wrong. We might enter this new chapter of stepping into reconciliation and we might do it wrong. I've probably already done 1,000 things wrong in this attempt, but it doesn't mean we stop trying. Before I end my time up here with all of you, I want to share one last story with all of you. Many of you in this room with me right now lived through the Civil Rights Act. In addition, the right to marry whomever you want, and many other momentous occasions. One that you might not know that you lived through was the American Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978. That's right. Just shy of 50 years ago, it would have been illegal for me to even think about smudging with all of you, let alone in a public institution like my school building. 4 years ago, when I started to teach here in Minneapolis, the state just pushed for the right to smudge in schools and other public institutions. Even with that right, my little relatives would gather outside, regardless of if it was snowing, below freezing, over 100 degrees out, rain, wind, whatever. Since then, I gained a colleague, a true relative, a person who I believe our spirits have been intertwined with forever. My Ojibwe brother and I, along with now 3 other Native educators and over 60 Native students, continue to push for further advocacy for our culture in our school. Was it always pretty? Absolutely not. Did we mess up a lot along the way? Of course. And still, like before, there is always that dangling factor that I work in an institution that perpetuated the genocide of my people and continues to cause harm to me and my little relatives. Still, we continue to practice resilience and find ways to make it better for the next generation of little Native relatives. My beloveds, all of you have done work, and you didn't even know about it. Last week, I sat in a room with my Native students and their home families as we recognized American Indian Heritage Month. Our church provided the food and drinks for our families to come together and celebrate the unveiling of a new multi-wall mural that features the art of our Native American students in Minneapolis. And within that moment of being surrounded by my little relatives and their families, we smudged before we ate the food for our little feast. And as we smudged, a grandmother in the room, an elder, took a moment and wanted to tell me and the other educators thank you. She began to grow tears in her eyes as she said, "Never in a million lifetimes would I have imagined that I would be in a school and practicing one of our sacred ceremonies. All of you adults, thank you. Thank you for bringing this to our little relatives." Beloveds, whatever step we take next, it won't be perfect. Nothing will ever be 100%. It will be muddy and rough. But I want you to take the stories I shared with all of you today and remind yourself that we can do the hard work. We can practice resiliency just like my ancestors did over the last 500 years. If I can stand before all of you and even share the words of my ancestors, then I am living proof that anything can happen. As a survivor of genocide, I want all of you to think about how we can survive this moment and make it even further to the next day. When we get out of the mindset that anything has to be 100%, then we can truly make change. Come with me. Let's practice regulating our emotions that might come along this journey and remind ourselves that through resilience, we can take the steps toward a possible resolution in the future. Amanam, tlakamati, gracias. Thank you, my relatives. Aho.
Oh, we were going to do a little, yeah. Yeah, we were. It's okay. All right. That's what happens when you try to switch things between the 9 and the 11. It doesn't always happen the way one might imagine. So I want to just get a couple announcements out here. Remind you of the date of December 9th, which is a Tuesday at 7:30. There'll be information in the Liberal. Denise was talking about a training that's on December 2nd from 5:30 to 7:30 here. It says that dinner will be served and childcare is available. You can learn about plugging in and skilling up to help stop authoritarianism and white Christian nationalism, lead with love, courage, and faith to fight a government and a culture that affirms the dignity, worth, and to affirm that the dignity, worth, and civil rights of every human being. Lena and a couple other Unitarian Universalists just attended a really intense training, so she's bringing that back to us. They are asking for a donation to help cover it. And I think Denise, who you just stood up and had talked, will you just raise your hand? And I can forward an email to you if you're interested, because it looks like there's a link and we won't have our e-news going out before that. Another thing to know about is that Karen Hutt has been leading a political grief group at 1 o'clock on this Sunday of the month, but we had previously agreed she wouldn't do it this weekend because it's Thanksgiving, and I forgot. And so I had it in the program guide, and that is actually not true. So don't stick around for political grief. That will not be happening today. You can share it with one another in the social hall instead. And then just remember that next Sunday will be Glenn Thomas's last Sunday with us, and let us come together to celebrate the gifts he has given us throughout these years and the magic of his ability to lead worship here at First Universalist. So that will be at both services next Sunday. If you would stand up and hold hands, Amelia will benedict us out.
Ooh, I get to benedict people. Beloveds, we have a lot of work to do. There's no way we will move forward through our next chapters without making mistakes. Don't look for the 100%. In addition, regulate through the uncomfy feelings and recognize that now that we know better, we can do better. The next generation of little relatives is counting on us to make it even better. Thank you. Aho.
We are going.